They said it was impossible, that no single act could silence the steady hum of global commerce, that the flow of oil, the lifeblood of modern civilization, would never be interrupted. But on that day, when Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz, the world's illusion of control shattered like fragile glass. The Strait of Hormuz, a slender ribbon of water threading between Iran and Oman, is no ordinary passage. It's the artery through which nearly 20 million barrels of oil pulse every day, fueling factories, homes, and cities across continents. For decades, this narrow stretch has been taken for granted, treated like a silent servant to the ambitions of the powerful. But that silence was never guaranteed. When Iran made the decision to shut the strait, it wasn't just a move on a chessboard of military might or economic sanctions. It was a declaration, a reminder that power doesn't belong to those who take it for granted. That beneath the surface of politics and diplomacy, beneath the noise of sanctions and threats, lies the unyielding spirit of a nation refusing to be ignored. Ships froze, markets trembled, headlines screamed chaos. But behind the scenes, a deeper story was unfolding, a story not about oil or weapons, but about dignity, sovereignty, and awakening. For years, Iran endured crushing sanctions that strangled its economy. It watched its scientists fall victim to assassination. It faced cyber attacks designed to cripple its infrastructure. Allies were toppled, neighbors bombed and abandoned. Through it all, Iran remained patient, enduring storms that sought to break its will. But patience has limits, and when those limits were breached, Iran chose not to cower. It chose to stand tall. This wasn't about provoking war. It was about reclaiming respect. It was a message sent not with a shout, but with calculated silence, closing the gate that had long been left open. A gate through which flowed the comfort and power of some of the world's mightiest nations. Control over the strait is not merely a tactical advantage, it is leverage. The ability to disrupt the flow of energy, and by extension, influence economies and politics on a global scale. Iran held that card quietly, patiently until the moment arrived to play it. And when it did, the world sat up and took notice. The reaction was swift and revealing. Panic didn't come from missiles launched or bombs dropped. It came from the realization that a single decision by one nation, a Muslim nation, could shake markets from New York to Tokyo and force capitals to scramble in emergency meetings. For the Muslim world, this moment was more than news, it was a symbol. It was a signal that the long-held narrative of submission and silence was breaking, that dignity, when defended with strategy and courage, can still reverberate through the halls of power. When Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz, the world's media engines roared to life. But what stories did they tell? What truths did they reveal? And what did they hide? Instantly, Iran was cast as the aggressor, the troublemaker disrupting peace and stability. The headlines screamed threats, provocations, and dangers. But those who truly understand geopolitics know this narrative is incomplete. It's a carefully crafted version of reality, shaped by interests and biases. This closure was not a reckless provocation, but the final act in a long play of pressures and injustices. For decades, Iran had been subjected to sanctions designed to strangle its economy, cyber attacks aimed at crippling its infrastructure, and the silent assassination of its brightest minds. Yet the global media rarely told that side of the story. Instead, it focused on the effects: the rising oil prices, the shaken markets, the diplomatic turmoil, without giving context to the causes. This omission is no accident. It's part of a long history where Muslim nations defending themselves are painted as threats, while their suffering is ignored or downplayed. When Iran asserts its sovereignty, it's labeled dangerous. When it refuses to submit, it's called defiant. This distortion shapes how the world perceives Muslims as problems, not people with legitimate grievances and rights. But Iran's move pierced this veil. It exposed the uncomfortable truth. The global narrative is often a tool of control, not clarity. It forces Muslims everywhere to confront a hard reality. If we allow others to tell our stories, those stories will never fully reflect our truth. Iran's resistance is multifaceted: economic, political, military, spiritual. But one of its strongest weapons is the refusal to accept a version of reality imposed by outsiders. It's a lesson for all: tell your story, or others will tell it for you. And their version may not be one you recognize. The global order appears firm, stable, unshakable, but Iran's bold move showed the fragility beneath the surface. No matter how powerful a nation seems, vulnerabilities exist. Even giants can tremble. This tremble wasn't born from a barrage of missiles. It came from strategic insight, resilience, and the will to act decisively. For the West, it wasn't a military threat that shook the foundation, it was the challenge to the status quo itself. It was the reminder that dominance is never guaranteed, that the illusion of control can be broken by a single act of will. This realization is what truly scares those who claim power. For the Muslim world, Iran's action carried deeper meaning. It was a spiritual signal, a moment for self-reflection and awakening. Too long has the Ummah been fractured by fear, division, and the false comfort of silence. But strength is not the absence of fear. It is the courage to rise despite it. Iran's move was not just political chess, it was a call to remember who we are, to reclaim our dignity and unity. It was a reminder that power doesn't always flow from wealth or weapons. Sometimes it flows from the courage to say enough, to draw a line, and to stand alone if necessary. That kind of power changes perceptions. It awakens hope. It shifts the tides of history. The Muslim world has too often watched from the sidelines, cautious and fragmented. But moments like this are not just events to observe. They are calls to action, invitations to rise, to unite, and to walk forward with strength and purpose. The world may have seen Iran's closing of the Strait of Hormuz as a geopolitical flashpoint, a crisis to be contained. But for those who look deeper, it was a moment of awakening, a call to remember that dignity is not granted by others. It is claimed by those who refuse to yield. For too long, the Muslim world has allowed fear, division, and outside influence to dictate its story. But Iran's bold action challenged that narrative. It shattered the illusion that submission is the only option and reminded us that unity, faith, and courage can shake the foundations of empires. This is not a call to arms. It is a call to spirit, to reflection, to reclaiming the power within each of us and within our communities. The true strength of a nation and of a people is not just in weapons or wealth. It is in the unbreakable will to stand for what is right, even when the world tries to silence you. Iran's move was imperfect. No act of resistance is without consequence. But it was loud, unyielding, and clear. It demanded the world listen, and in doing so, it demanded we listen to ourselves. It asked, where do we stand? Will we remain silent, divided, and unsure, or will we rise with wisdom, with unity, with strength? The choice lies with each of us. The power to shape our future is not distant or out of reach. It lies in faith grounded in action, in courage married with clarity, in unity built on respect and shared purpose. Iran's decision to close the Strait of Hormuz was more than a disruption of oil flow. It was a disruption of assumptions about power, control, and destiny. It proved that true power does not belong to the loudest or the strongest alone. It belongs to those who understand their own worth and are brave enough to act on it. For the Muslim Ummah, this is a moment to remember our history, a history rich with strength, innovation, and resilience. A history that teaches us that unity is not just desirable, it is necessary. The path forward demands that we reclaim our voices, that we tell our stories, that we stand for justice even when it costs us comfort. The world will try to frame us as threats or problems, but we must see beyond those narratives. We must define ourselves on our own terms. And in doing so, we will inspire a new generation, one that understands that dignity is never negotiable, that courage is contagious, and that unity is our greatest strength. So, as the Strait of Hormuz remains a symbol of power, resilience, and defiance, let it also become a beacon, a reminder that when we stand together with purpose and faith, we can shape history. This is our moment. Our call to rise, to the youth who dream of justice, to the elders who remember the past, to the women and men who pray for a better tomorrow, this is the time. Let Iran's bold act not just be a story in the news, but a lesson in courage, dignity, and awakening. The future is already changing. The question is, will we rise to meet it? May Allah guide us all on this journey of justice, unity, and strength. Thank you for listening with an open heart. Walk forward with clarity, with courage, and with the unshakable belief that truth, when defended with faith, can never be silenced.